I think a lot of us are definitely noticing that something funky is going on with time right now.
I love that. I do agree. I think something funky is going on with timeline. So I'm ready to dive in and see what can be revealed around all of this.
Cool. Okay, let's have a look. Greetings to you, Blessed One. We are with you. And of course, as consciousness for the human expands, as it does, time becomes less reliable in its linear sense, less coherent with the true nature of your multidimensional self. So we wouldn't say that the nature of time is changing, nor would we say that it is speeding up or slowing down. It is more that where your consciousness is generating its clearest view is in a space beyond time. So what you're discovering is that your consciousness in and of itself within this earth reality is engaging with linear sense of time and disengaging, engaging and disengaging. And that is the pulse, that is the propulsion nature of cosmic energy that is natural in all essence of life. So there are many that would say, well, what I thought was going to happen then didn't happen and it's happening now. Or what wasn't happening then that I thought should happen is happening now, or vice versa. Or I thought that something would be happening now and suddenly it's not, and I'm somewhere else. Am I on a different timeline? Did I get it wrong? And indeed, this is happening perhaps in terms of investments with people at this time, or in terms of relationships. And what we are discovering is that as human consciousness is evolving beyond the requirement for a cause and effect experience. So we have spoken about this previously in other seminars about how humanity at this time is moving into a space of possibility and creation once again, where consequence from the past has less relevance for the present moment. Likewise, effect in the future has less relevance for the present moment. So there are many humans at this time that are scratching their heads and saying, well, how did I get it wrong? Because this looked really clear that didn't happen. Or I can see things happening ahead that I didn't necessarily want. So this, in essence, is about understanding that humanity is releasing itself from consequence from the past and assurance in the future. And this, of course, is very troubling to the mind because the mind wants this reassurance. It spends all of its energy and time trying to strategize and predict and review so that it can keep human attention in third dimensionality. What we want to say is that your ability to become disarmed by the linearity and prediction is a hallmark that you are now creating completely new possibilities. Now, the question is this: if something I was sure was going to happen is not happening or does not look like it will happen, does this mean that I have moved into a different timeline? And what we would say and how we would wish for you to view it is that you have moved beyond the limitations of that timeline, which means that anything that was created in cause and effect is a limited version of what is available to you. So, for example, if you had an idea about abundance, or you had an idea about a relationship or a particular project that you would wish to see coming to its fullness, whatever you had designed or strategized for that to occur was a limited version of the possibility of what is available there. And that possibility is never actually designed around a particular perceived blueprint of how it should be. That possibility is always based upon the vibration of what it could be. So, for example, investments. Yes, let us say that there is an investment and we want to put our money here and we have strategized and we want it to end up here. That's a wonderful plan. What happens when that's disrupted? Is there a sense of failure? Was there a mistake? Or are you being elevated into a new spectrum of frequency and vibration where the feeling you wanted to have generated by that success or perceived outcome now has a possibility to be experienced in a multitude of different ways you hadn't even thought of. So there are other possibilities. Whatever you seeded in vibration is still available to you, but in a more expanded way. It's only the framework and the design that is probably no longer viable for you. So it's just like when you plant a seed in third dimensional reality, you want the seed to become something, but in essence, it must burst open and break out of its own design to actually become something you never even thought of.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I can see how if the seed is planted in one way, let's just take the financial situation with like, oh, that's going to grow into a certain kind of plant and it's going to look like this in X amount of time, that the reality is that it can actually shift to something much greater than what I could have envisioned. But I have to first let go of what currently is happening.
Well, it's letting go of the design.
Right.
So that the actual potential of the vibration of the creation itself can flourish into something even greater than you had anticipated was possible. That's evolution, because evolution is never planned. And that's what humanity does not understand. You cannot have a design for what you want something to evolve to. That's not evolution. Evolution is always something that becomes bigger than what is already known or goes beyond the limitation of what you believe is possible. So what's very important in situations like this, where there is a perceived disappointment or there is a perceived sense of failure, is to understand that the vibration of that seed still exists, and it's now breaking through the limitation of your original design for it. So it's very important to always go back to, well, what was the hope? What was the feeling behind this? What was the exhilaration? What was the yes moment that led me to make that decision with so much confidence? Because that vibration is now what can bring forth a completely new experience of itself.
Yeah.
That's evolution.
Yeah.
So this is evolution of ideas. This is evolution of creation. It's breaking free of the timeline of expectation to become something even greater.
Right. And so how do I, or how do any of us then let go of whatever the original design was or the impotence for us? And when I say let go of, just let go of, oh, it didn't happen, therefore it's not going to happen at all, as opposed to it didn't happen the way I thought it would. Gee, it's breaking up into a new energy or a new vibration that has even more possibility, or the next possibility.
Well, let's consider how creation and design actually work within your reality, because there is third dimensionality and linearity. Nothing ever is experienced concurrently. Everything's separated out by this sense of time and cause and effect. So when you initially have the idea for investment, for example, it's easy to say, well, there was a thought, and then there was a feeling for it. So there was a thought about, this looks like a good idea. I can see the sense in it. There's a strategy, there's a projection, there's a design. And then there's a feeling, this feels good, yes. But what happens within your third dimensionality is that you get very confused because you live in an inverted reality. So what happens is you believe that the design comes first and you have an idea, and then you either have a good feeling or a bad feeling about it. Yeah. So that's how you order it in your logical sequential thinking. There was the idea and then there was a feeling. But if you understand your reality and that light travels backwards through your reality, so everything is experienced in retrospect, you will begin to understand that the opposite is actually true. So how creation actually happens is you have a vibration or a feeling about something, something's feeling good, and then there is an idea or a design developed for it.
Right.
To create a structure or a scaffolding for it so that that vibration can continue to exist in your reality or your timeline.
Yeah.
So what humans don't realize is that the design for the feeling state is introduced by the mind to rationalize its existence.
Yeah. I can
But
see
the
that.
feeling state is the actual creation energy itself. So that's why it's so important, why so many great masters and sages talk about non-attachment to the idea or the design, because that's just the casing.
Yeah.
The energy of the feeling that you had at the time when you made the choice is actually where the creation sits, and you can still access that.
Yeah.
You can still go into that, oh, I know what that feels like to have that feeling. You don't have to have a design for it. And this is important.
So I got that. That's really clear. And what I loved was where you said it was the scaffolding. So it's really the scaffolding that's falling away for the original design, so that possibly new scaffolding or no scaffolding is needed. Is it possible just to have the vibration without the scaffolding to make it tangible in this 3D dimension?
Well, that's what many humans are doing on the planet at this time. There are many beings on the planet at this time that are here and are just sitting and vibrating with that creative energy without requiring a scaffolding for it to become tangible or evident within your material reality. And what that's doing is it's generating a larger presence of new creative energy so that a new paradigm and new blueprints for design can be experienced for the Earth reality. In essence, a new Earth paradigm.
Right.
So you may be able to sit in a state, and many are at this time, where there's a sense of exhilaration or anticipation, but we have no design for it yet. That's because you're actually now beginning to move out of the limitation of third dimensionality. The original feeling for something wonderful can happen is more accessible to you, but don't be fooled into thinking that you need to trap it with a design or a strategy to make it real. Because if you're willing to just sit with that, you're going to allow it to become an even more expansive creative field within your experience. And what you find is that eventually there will be an idea or a presentation of how this can unfold that's far greater than anything you could have imagined before. That's the birthing experience. But you are sitting in an uncomfortable space, as many humans are at this time, where there is disillusionment, because you really felt like it was the right thing. My intuition was good. How did I get this wrong? Because now it's not happening, or now it's not going to unfold. This is the casing coming off the seed. Because the casing is the design or the idea about how it should happen and what it should look like. But the actual essence of it itself is just beginning to expand. This is a quickening, and it can feel very uncomfortable for the human.
Right.
And frustrating.
Yes. Yes. Well, that was a beautiful explanation about just staying with the vibration of what the creation is and allowing a design possibly to show up or not show up for it. But what I get is that the importance is just staying with the vibration of whatever the original sense or feeling.
How did it feel when you seeded it? So it's not even sitting with what it was, it's sitting in how it feels.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when you go to the design, it feels like disappointment, it feels frustrating, it feels limited. Wonderful. Because that means your consciousness is naturally becoming less attached to the casing or the scaffolding of potential. It's becoming less attached to limitation. And it's now focusing on, well, what feels good? What feels good is that sense of potential and expectation and anticipation. The exhilaration of anticipation. Something wonderful could come of this. This was a yes moment for me. That's the vibration for creation.
Yeah.
And if you're vibrating at that frequency, so much more begins to reveal itself within your sphere of reality that can enable that seed to now become something even greater. So this is a time for creation with magnitude. And we do want to say that the reality of creation for humans is that it's far greater to create something of great magnitude than it is to create something very finite and small.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Yeah. I can see that. Wow. Well, this has been incredibly helpful to have this distinction between the feeling sense and the creation energy, and then the scaffolding that just makes it tangible, and that the scaffolding really is just the seed breaking into its new design. It's no longer in a seed. It's now got little leaves, or it's growing into something very different than what it was previously.
It's no longer limited.
Right.
So it's very important to know you didn't get it wrong. When you had that feeling with whatever it was, investment, relationship, project, whatever it was, the feeling that you had when you made the choice and you were so sure and it felt so good is the truth of its potential. It may now occur in an even greater way. And that's so important, because there are many humans at this time saying, I shouldn't have trusted myself, or I got it wrong.
Right.
And then what happens is the mind says, well, what is the lesson in this? And it starts to go into review. And how would we do it differently next time? But that's an old paradigm where that opening of what else is possible wasn't as easily available for the collective human consciousness. So it's habitual for the mind to view and review, correct, try and do it again slightly differently. That's a repetition cycle. That's not an evolution. Evolution is always a breaking out of incremental changes for a perceived sense of improvement. Evolution is completely new design.
Yeah. That's
true evolution.
Yeah. And then if you go back to like that original sense of what it was that, was the excitement and the passion and so on, and if you check in with that now, are there any times where like, oh, I'm not interested in that seed anymore. I'm not interested in that particular vibration?
Well, it's not about being interested in the vibration, because that vibration feels good to you. It's that you're not interested in the design of the casing that was sitting around it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very great
very important to distinguish between how it feels in your body and what the introduced thought or design or scaffolding is.
Yeah. 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 Very good distinction. Thank you.
Yes. So if you have some clay and you make a statue, there's some scaffolding that sits around it for that particular design. Now, when the scaffolding goes and the sun comes, perhaps that's clay, or perhaps it's hardened and the rain comes and then it softens. The clay is still there. It can just now become something even more magnificent.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
The essence is still there. Yes, absolutely.
So you didn't get it wrong. No one gets it wrong. There are no mistakes. There's only opportunities for evolution.
Well, that's a powerful statement. There are no mistakes. There's just opportunities for evolution. Evolution
of design. Because your essence is as it is, as it is, as it is, as it is.
It is. Thank you.
Very well, Blessed One. Peace be with you.
And with you.